Hey, and welcome to Out of Hiding, a podcast where we focus on growing in God by seeking His truth. Hosted by Dan Morrow and David Flores. What's up, guys?
What's up?
Hello, hello.
Have you guys been getting all the alerts on your phone about the tornado risk or under tornado watch?
I just got a tornado watch alert.
Let's go.
Here we go.
It's East Texas
Just
in
another-
springtime.
That's it.
Not the day.
Not that day.
Just going to record it.
We'll
when it
see.
comes by. So,
Oh, man.
well, this is going to be part 2
Adam,
of
we
our...
missed you last week.
Yeah, I missed being here. I hated to miss.
Yeah. Tell
Heard it
that
was
selfish wife of yours next time she's going to rob you and take you on a trip, just the two of you, to
I'm
consider your friends first.
Babe, have you cleared it with everybody?
Yeah. It's not cool. Actually, Randy, though, did a really good job.
I figured he'd be
It's
good
great.
in
It
this
was
spot.
great to have him on. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, so this is part 2. So, question number 1. If you have one gorilla versus 100 humans, who's going to win? Have you been seeing that all over social media?
Do we get weapons?
I don't know. See, they didn't say. They didn't specify.
I still believe 100 humans can overwhelm one gorilla.
I would think so.
Now, can
you
you
seen-
coordinate 100 humans? No.
Yeah.
Half of them are going to run immediately. They're not going to unify and do it.
You're going to be left with the third.
If we pick our humans, I think we got this in the
Yeah.
back.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. You seen some of these gorillas? Like, I don't know.
No, the first round is going to die. Like, you're going to get, but
The
while
first
he's
10.
killing them, you can do some stuff.
You have to do something.
Yeah, you got to do something.
The first 10.
I
are
mean,
gonna
there's a
get
reason
beat.
we're at the top of the food chain.
This is true.
And the gorillas are not running around
That's
doing
why
what
I asked,
we're doing.
That's why I asked about weapons. Do we
Yeah.
get? Do we get?
If we get a stick, we could get anything. A shoestring, you do it right. Humans are smart. They're smarter than apes.
Yep.
They are.
And if we got time to plan it out, I mean, we're
Yeah.
pretty good.
It'd be tough. I wouldn't want to be one of the 100.
I don't want to be like, I've been watching videos. They're like, you're number 100 and you just watch 99 get beat. Well, all right.
100 at a
Well,
time or
I'm-
one at a time?
100 at a time.
I'm
okay.
glad the internet has moved on, though, from you have 100 kids on a train track. Remember that whole, you have to pick to kill all them or to kill, it was like,
That's just you, man. I don't know.
no. Me and Eve did this hypothetical for a month that she saw on, I don't know if it was TikTok or what, but it was just a dumb hypothetical.
Yeah.
You gotta love those hypothetical situations.
Yeah, you save your kid or you save 100 kids.
Oh yeah.
That one, and you have the lever in your hand,
Oh.
and yeah, it was,
I don't.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's tough.
All right.
Let's get started.
So, question number 1. Let's kick it off. I have such a hard time tithing. Social media has made it even harder for me. How do I work on this?
Coming out of the gate with tithing. I love it.
So I don't know where they're at, right? Obviously, they're struggling with it, and I understand the struggle of the tithe. What makes people struggle with tithe is, well, they treat it like the Little Dribblers organization, and I'm telling you out of my experience. I've treated the tithe like I'm giving to a nonprofit Little Dribblers organization, and then I see the Little Dribblers organization spend it in a different way than I think they should, and I get mad about it. The tithe is not that, because the tithe is literally, it's given in faith to God, and at that moment it becomes God's. And if the church squanders it or doesn't spend it the way you think they should, or whatever, that does not matter, because that's between them and God.
Yeah.
And if you can't see it that way, then you get emotionally attached to that money. But once you realize that 10th is actually God's, and we're required,
Yeah.
and you can do it with that mindset, it doesn't matter how it's spent. It doesn't matter, because you gave it in faith and it's God's.
I think, yeah, same way. I think it's like with any other biblical principle. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna fight at our flesh, right? Our flesh is gonna say no every time. Why in the world would you give 10% of your hard-earned money, all that kind of stuff? You take it back and you go, you could teach on it all day long. It's God who gives you the power to get wealth, so it's God who gives you the 100% anyways. But I know where they're coming from with like social media and all that kind of stuff, because everything's so on blast now, and you see what we would probably consider, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever, like misuse of funds and all this kind of stuff. And so, man, it can be absolutely tough. It can be tough to like trust, like what Dan's saying. Are they going to spend it wisely? Are they, all that kind of stuff? But at the end of the day, it's what Dan said. I'm not giving to a person. Basically, I'm giving to God, and I have to trust. I have to have faith to believe that when I give it to God, whatever is done with it, right? We all want to be wise, good stewards. Whatever is done with it is it's out of my hands now. It's out of my hands now. So Jesse and I, we've tithe. I've tithed 10%. The majority of my life, but Jesse and I, as a family, we tithe 10%. And whenever we release it and we give it, like it comes straight out of the bank account. Like as soon as the paycheck hits, 10%'s gone. And let me tell you though, there's times when I look at that and I go, I could really use that right now. You know what I'm saying? I could really use that right now. But it's this faithful obedience, I believe, that all rest in the heart, saying, God, I trust that you can do more with 90 than I could ever do with 100.
So I was out to eat one time with one of my buddies from work, and we were talking about it, and I was telling him, hey, I just, recently started doing it, and it's like, it just feels good. And he was kind of like talking to me about it, and I didn't really know the answer to it, but he was saying, I do 10%, but I don't just do it to the church. I give church some, and then I do this thing. I go to this hospital, and he does like a bunch of stuff there. Does that all consider under the same bucket, or is it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of different answers on that question.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We tithe, we give it to ministry. You know what I'm saying? Like ministry, like church-related, all that kind of stuff. That's just what we feel to do. Yeah. And I would never fight anybody on that. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day,
I just feel like it's like we're dictating where it goes rather than it should be.
Sure.
I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
At the end of the day, it's just I think it's just obedience. Mm-hmm.
Back to that being spirit led.
Yep.
Following peace and praying about it, seeking the Holy Spirit. He's never going to lead you wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Second question: why does God allow suffering, especially for people who are trying to do right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question.
I was just in my early mornings men group this morning and led through a passage, I think, if I remember correctly, Matthew 7:24 through 27, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, longest recorded sermon, all that kind of stuff, Jesus laying things out. And then he ends this beautiful message with these 3 verses, and it's this: the storms are coming. Like, it wasn't like, hey, there might be a storm in your life. There might be some suffering in your life that like there might be some things. No, it was like suffering is coming. Basically, you can boil it down to that. Things are going to hurt, all that kind of stuff. Where's your foundation built? And we had a great conversation around that today, and I think it applies to what that question is about, right? Why does suffering happen? I think it's a part of following Jesus. And that doesn't preach very well sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Like, because, no, he's supposed to fix all my problems, and I'm, supposed to have this perfect, beautiful life. But I think true faith is tested a lot of times in the midst of suffering.
I totally agree. I'm going to go one step further. Look at nature. Look at the biological principles in suffering. If I go to the gym and I put my body through suffering, God made my body in the middle of that suffering to create chemicals in my brain that actually generate pleasure. They generate and stimulate good mood vibes. They generate, when you go to the gym, you work out really hard. Well, yeah, your brain fills up with chemicals, endorphins, dopamine. All those things are being built. That to me is it signals where God is and where He stands on suffering. And then back to earthly suffering. If we didn't suffer, would we ever come to God? And that's part of the reason it's hard when you're extremely wealthy. When I've had lots of wealth in my life, it's hard for me to run to God because there's no suffering. I can buy what I want and I can do what I want. The only suffering came from the empty part inside of me at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's much more difficult than when Don and I were broke. We were suffering financially. We were suffering all those things. Yeah. We were running to God with everything.
Yeah.
And I think suffering is an essential part of the human experience to push us to God. And, Paul went through so much suffering, but he tells us to just embrace it.
Count it all joy.
Yeah, count it all joy. And
that's what was it, because what you just hit on is what we talked about a lot today, was the idea of, we talked about the storms that are coming. It ultimately comes down to, like, where's my foundation built? I can outlast the storm if my foundation's right. All that kind of stuff. But what we hinted on was the idea of, man, when do people really, like, I think about the majority of my meetings I have, right? And it's people who are going through it. You know what I'm saying? And so they're drawing. What are they doing? They're not drawing close to me. They're trying to draw close to God. They're pulling on Him in this moment. And I told him, I said, I don't worry about people when they're necessarily going through something. I worry about people when life is great.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, fundamentally,
sure.
That's back to the old saying, the idle hands are the devil's workshop. Idle hands, there's no suffering there. You're bored. You're like, ooh, what do I do now? Life is great. I've got plenty of money in the bank. What am I doing? Sure. That's when we tend to get in. That's when I've gotten in trouble.
And I think it also reveals another part of God's nature to us, that He is the Redeemer. You know what I'm saying? That He is the Good Shepherd. And in this season, I may be going through some suffering or going through something, but my faith is in Him, right? Like, I'm going to keep pressing. I'm going to keep following. I'm going to keep believing, all of these kind of things, because He's the ultimate one that's going to deliver. And, I love Jesus as the provider. I love Him as the Good Shepherd, all that kind of stuff. And I love Him as the deliverer, but I hate the place it brings me to. You know what I'm saying? Because I need deliverance from something.
The other form of suffering that really tends to hurt more than others is loss, whether it be a loved one, a child, a accident,
Terrible.
all those terrible things. That's hard for people to get through, and that's the one that really creeps into people's minds. Why does God allow a little innocent kid to be killed or die of disease or all that? And holistically, I believe that's just part of a fallen world that we live in. That's a part of Satan is the prince of this world. It's a worldly system we live in, and there's worldly consequences, and that's why we must lean on God. We must lean on Jesus even more than ever, because to understand how truly broken this world system is, it's designed to kill you. It's designed to break you down. It's designed to kill you. It's designed to get you to run away from God. That's what Satan's end goal is. And
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
That was good. How do we stop habitual sinning? What does day-to-day look like?
Habitual sinning. I can't get out of this. I'm trapped. I'm stuck. First off, you got to break out of that mind frame. Now, I think, and I'm going to say it again probably for the 100th time on this podcast. You have to die to self. You have to lay down. I mean, you have to pick up the cross and follow Jesus. The cross is the cross is a beautiful thing now, but because of what it represents in our culture and all that kind of stuff, the cross was a sign of death and defeat. You know what I'm saying? Like Jesus was hung on this thing, but He turned it, right? He turned it into a place of victory and triumph and all that kind of stuff. But because we all get stuck in patterns, and here's what I believe: like, we all have tendencies. We all lean somewhere. So like sin in my life, my lean is probably going to look different than Dan's lean towards sin. It's going to look different than your lean, but we all experience it in some capacity. And we're just bent that way. The Bible talks about sin as like transgression, there's sin, and then there's one more that I'm blanking on right now. But some of these sins were actually, if we want to go there, we're actually just kind of just like passed down on us. Like, why do I struggle with the same thing my dad struggles with? My granddad struggled with it. His dad struggled with it. Like all this kind of stuff. That sin nature inside of all of us. And so what we have to understand is recognize, where do I lean? What is it in my life? Is it pride? Is it sexual addiction? Is it abuse? Is it those kind of things? We have to know what we're fighting first, and then we have to come to a spot where we go, I'm not capable of overcoming in and of my own self. I don't know about you guys, but I've been in sin patterns in my life where I'm like, I am not enough to overcome this. I am going to need God to help me here. And so that's, to me, what dying to self looks like. Adam isn't enough to overcome this, but I know somebody who is. And that's that whole prayer, God, help me. You know what I'm saying? Like show up, show me. No temptation has overcome you except what is common to man. That's there in the New Testament. So there's no sin, there's no temptation that can overcome a believer where we just go, I had no choice. God like pulls that card out from me, like underneath us. And he says, no, through the power of my Holy Spirit, you can overcome, but you're going to have to figure out what that looks like. And I think the first step is dying to self.
Totally agree. And I like to think of it this way. You know, the Bible puts extreme emphasis on renewing the mind. If I want to learn the guitar, I can approach it a couple different ways, but this is how Christians approach the sin thing. They grab the guitar, they pull it out of the case, and they just stare at it, and they try to strum it. And they don't know anything about it. They don't know what does what. But if they just sat there and strummed it for 10 years, eventually they might pick up a little bit of something. Or they could start with the mind. They could get on YouTube and they could start with a simple lesson on how to hold the guitar, how to strum the guitar. And once the mind catches hold, then faith starts to build. And then you can activate the supernatural. So early on in my Christian walk, I didn't know anything about the Bible. My mind didn't understand. But as I started to renew the mind, I was able to activate the supernatural power of God because I had an understanding of it. The mind grabbed a hold of it. It started to become a living thing inside of me. But the baby Christians, they put all the emphasis on trying to stop the habit of the sin. Take that energy, forget about it. If you're stuck in a sin right now, forget about the sin. Focus your energy on renewing your mind and chasing Jesus mercilessly. And in that process, the mind begins to renew and the supernatural can be active in your life. And all of a sudden you look up one day and you're like, wait a minute, I haven't wanted to do that in a while. What's going on? Well, that's the supernatural power of activating and renewing your mind and using faith.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Like, these are all great questions, you know what I'm saying? And I don't want to come across on this podcast of like the expert on any of this stuff, okay?
Absolutely.
Like at all, because these are all like real things in people's lives, and I just appreciate the open, honest questions. Like, it's beautiful.
Yeah. One of the other questions, how do I know if I'm really saved? I accepted God into my heart and have been baptized, but sometimes I feel like I'm going through the motions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Join the club.
And no one on this earth can convince you that you're saved. That is between you and God.
Goes back to Pastor Randy and that relationship, you know.
It's like the idea of, in church when you ask at the end, or we do it a lot of times, like, hey, if you want to accept Jesus in your heart, like, raise your hand. And we get people like, week after week, it's like, that's me. That's me. And it's like, no, but you did that last week. You know what I'm saying? I don't truly know what's going on in that person's life or in that person's heart. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to celebrate that one like I did the last one, because maybe there's something deeper that's going on, going, oh my gosh, I wasn't where I thought I was, or any of that kind of stuff. And then there's also there's that beautiful grace. You know what I'm saying? There's that beautiful grace that surpasses maybe sometimes that things that I can't figure out in my head. And I think that question comes from a place of maybe wanting to follow Jesus at a deeper level than they've known to this point. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, they want to go deeper, so they don't even know if they're saved yet, or like kind of deal. Well, chances are, if you've committed your life to Jesus, you are saved, right? Now, I'm not trying to convince you of that, but maybe there's a draw to go deeper with him in that moment. That you're like, it's not about salvation anymore. It's about being a disciple.
Yep.
I don't know.
I like that. I like
That's
that
what
a
I
lot.
pick up.
Yeah. I think there's also a natural progression in just wrestling with your faith. Wrestling. And
Work out your faith with fear and trembling.
Yeah, and in that moment, it's like, let's run to him with it. Because we can either run away and say, all right, God doesn't exist, or we can push through and say, God, I'm struggling believing in you. I'm struggling in my faith right now. Help me with my unbelief. I think there was a character in the Bible that might have said that.
Yeah. believe, but help me with my unbelief.
Yeah, help me with my unbelief. I mean, the disciples got to witness miracle after miracle. I mean, Peter got to walk on the water, and yet he still struggled with unbelief. He still struggled seeing those miracles in person, seeing those things. I think, again, it goes back to that flesh. The fleshly man wants to contradict the spirit. The spirit wants to believe. The flesh doesn't want to believe, and you're just fighting. Who do you feed more?
Yep. Do pastors struggle with mental health?
I know this one does.
I think that was pretty true.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mean to make light of mental health. That's not what I mean.
Yeah, man, I've had seasons of anxiety. I've had seasons of, let's call it depression, literally. I had seasons of all those things, and I think it's so easy to put a pastor up on like a pedestal and go, well, he just doesn't really understand what I'm going through. But that's not true. That's just not true. Like, it says about Jesus that he was acquainted with all the things that we walk through, everything. Like he knows. That's why he could save us, because he understood the depravity and the fallen nature of man, and the struggle, even mentally, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, pastors struggle. That's why you see burnout. That's why you see, all sorts of terrible situations, and people go, I can't believe that pastor would do that. And I go, he's just a dude.
Absolutely.
He's just a dude. I don't know. I mean, hopefully a dude that's further along in his walk than me, but he's just a guy. Like, I think back, you read stories all the time of pastors. I don't mean to go dark here, but literally like killing themselves.
Suicide. There's more than you think of that goes on.
Yeah. I mean, like, in the most horrific, ways, all that kind of stuff. And of course you see the past, 2020 vision, all that kind of stuff. You go, oh yeah, we can see it now. But absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Having grown up with pastors all around, grandfather, dad, Pastor Adam, lots of different pastors. This is one of the things that I have visually watched lead people into depression and mental health, and that is this: I have to guard and keep a certain level of persona, or they will not want to come to my church. And so they tend to fake, and then they hide, and that grows into this even bigger thing of them constantly trying to shield and not being close or intimate with anybody. Because they can't, they're afraid if they're close and intimate and they let their guard down a little bit, that person's going to weaponize and destroy their church with it.
Yeah.
And
when you say that, it brings up this point in my mind, and I'm going to misquote it, but I heard somebody say a long time ago, people will listen to you because of your victories, all that kind of stuff, but they'll connect with you through your struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's what you said, right? I got to put on this perfect idea of what people think I should be, and that just leads to misery and pain for not just you, but everybody around you as well.
Yep.
Not only that, it's a lie. Like I lived watching my grandfather and my dad basically live a double life to try to uphold an image and they took on the burden, if you will, of what Jesus wants to take. And at the end of the day, we're all just human. What makes a pastor a pastor? It's the anointing of God. Well, the anointing follows when there's fellowship. If we're in fellowship, the anointing is there and it's moving. If we get out of fellowship, God's like, okay, wait up. Mm-hmm. If you're not pursuing that relationship, it's easy to fall down that slope. Me, especially.
Yeah, and I think with that question, there is hope.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If that person that's asking that question has something going on mentally, all that kind of stuff, I just want to leave them with there is hope. No matter where you are, no matter what your thoughts may consume you right now, there is hope.
Reach out.
Yep.
You're not alone, man. Everybody, we all go through the same basic problems in life. We wrestle with things. We have.
Yep.
Gotcha. Next question. How do you properly fast? How to set the guidelines, and is it right to expect something in return from God? I don't want to enter into fasting without coming off like a Pharisee, and I want to be honoring to God.
Yeah. We do a fast around here at the beginning of the year, all that kind of stuff. The first portion of that question asked, how do you fast?
Let me go back to it.
Yeah.
It says, how do you fast? How do you set the guidelines? And is it right to expect something in return from God?
Yeah. A true biblical fast, like you take it out of the Bible, is food. You know what I'm saying? Now, is there other ones, like social media, all that? Sure, absolutely. But like the true like biblical fast is food, and so you just say, I'm gonna deprive myself of what the flesh wants to unlock something, grab something, get a hold of something that the spirit so desperately needs. Daniel fasted for breakthrough. Like Daniel fasted for breakthrough there out of the Old Testament. He didn't just say, I'm not going to eat for 21 days and let's just see what God did. There was a goal. There was a purpose. God, I need to hear from you. I need to hear your voice. And so I'm going to get rid of these distractions and I'm going to press in this moment, on a more intense level for this period of season, whatever it is. And I'm going to expect your goodness to show up in my life. I always expect to hear from God or see some sort of breakthrough whenever we enter into a fast. That's why I encourage the congregation every year. What's your prayer during this time? Where are you hoping? Where are you by faith wanting to see God like move in your life during these 3 days or 21 days or whatever it is?
So what do you typically do? 3, 21, 7,
Depends.
5?
I've done 21. I've done the Daniel fast for 21 days. I've never done a full fast for 21 days.
Be tough.
We've done some kind of fast every year, and in between I've done personal fast. I've done social media, which when I did that years ago.
Yeah.
I've done no sugar. I've done the Daniel fast. I've done all those, but the one that seems to resonate with me the most and the most results was a complete no fast or no food.
Mm-hmm.
And I typically do it from 3 to 5 days. This last year I did it 3 days. I think you did it too.
I did it.
Him and I did it
Yep.
together this last couple years. And
Yep.
I'm telling you, by day 2, I genuinely feel closer to God every time I've done it because there's a lot of suffering that goes on with the flesh. By day 2, the hunger is at its worst.
Oh man, absolutely.
And-
This year was tough for me. 3 days, like I've knocked out 3 days many times in the past, and been okay. Okay. This year, I was like, this is kind of kicking my butt.
I think it was tough because we're on a breakthrough.
Yeah,
I believe we were on a breakthrough year. Just watching what God did for Easter, watching what God has done this year to date, the things that have I believe was a breakthrough thing because it was especially tough for me this year as well. And I just encourage you, when you just go into a fast, go into it with the right heart. Mm-hmm. It's a condition of the heart. Go in with it. Hey, I know this is going to be hard. I know my flesh is, but I'm going to make my flesh submit to my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And be intentional. Every time I got food and hungry, crazy, I immediately went to prayer, which is outside of probably my normal day-to-day living. When I feel hungry, normally I just go feed my flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But during that intentional time, I spend it with God, and man, it's yielded. And I believe it's 100% not only fair, but I think it's required that we expect God. We test God in it, and we expect Him to speak to us. And it might be simple. And it might be something super profound, but He's never failed to speak to me in a fast.
Yeah. No, every time. I've never looked back on fasting is not my favorite thing to do, if we're just open and honest, like it's not like, oh, I can't wait to fast. But it is a spiritual discipline that I believe yields.
I think the fasting led into the night with Gabriel in this room.
Mm-hmm.
That was a part of it. The fasting started before that, and the obedience and the diligence it led to just God moving.
I think it's great too to go into a fast. If you're struggling with addiction, believe for the break to come through.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I've seen it in a few ways, right? If you're feel like you're at the end of a season, I've seen God use a fast to break you loose into a new season. break addictions off your life, but also just like spiritually and for your family. I mean, all this kind of stuff. I've seen God just use that fast to propel you into a new season.
Absolutely.
That's good. We have one Bible, ... Why do we have different denominations?
It's great. Humans. Yeah, no, it's great. I think everybody, right, has their preferences. Everybody has all of that kind of stuff. And I mean, where does that come from? That comes from us, our own selves. And as people, read through the Word, I think we get hyper focused on minors instead of majoring on the majors. You know what I'm saying? And so the denominational lines, I think a lot of times, are just preferences for people. This is how I view God. This seems right, feels right to me. All this kind of stuff. So I'm a Baptist. This seems right. This feels right to me. So I'm a Pentecostal, or I'm Church of Christ, or I'm a Methodist, or I'm whatever it is.
I'm a Catholic.
Yeah, and so. I mean, it goes way deeper than that, but I think at the end of the day, I think it comes down to what people prefer in their own minds, and that's why I always try to get people to rally around. Can we rally around the major?
Jesus.
Can we just rally around that? All right. Yes, absolutely. I think we would all say yes, and then from that point, I think it all splinters off on the different works and all that kind of stuff. One Bible. I don't even know how many denominations there are. A lot.
That's good. Here's a question. How do you navigate doing business with people at your church, especially when you've been burned before, but still want to serve and support your church community without damaging relationships or reputation?
Well, I have a lot to say about this. I have strong feelings about it. And when you go to church, you have a church family. Unfortunately, most of the church family that I've been exposed to are a little bit immature in their walk with God, and a little bit fleshly controlled. And then when you enter a business transaction, they tend to take advantage of the spiritual connection for their own benefit. Mm-hmm. Of their brother, which always, well, not always, but a lot of times leads to hurts. And as they're taking advantage and they're doing their thing, they're diminishing the family of God. Can it be done and done well? Yeah, but it takes mature Christians. It takes Christians that are not controlled by their flesh, and it can be done. But as a whole, I don't recommend it to anyone, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter doing business with anyone. Doing business is the world system. We do business. We have the finance system. We have all this stuff over here. We're required to be Spirit-led. If God's leading you to do it, but just do it with wisdom.
Yeah. So you're saying just don't do business with people at your home church, or with people that,
if you have someone close to you and you go to church together and you spend a lot of time together, I would not do business together.
Gotcha.
Because there's advantages on both sides that usually get taken. And I can name cases after cases after cases of great friends who went to church together, who then entered in a business transaction together and ended up suing each other.
Yep.
I mean, 25 years in construction, I've seen over and over and over.
Yeah, so when I first got here, and then church started growing a little bit, all that kind of stuff, I had an older lady come up to me, and she's just sweet as all get out, and she was like, we need to put together a church directory, and under the directory, put together what everybody does, like their business, all that kind of stuff. And I said, I love your heart, but no way. But what I meant by that was this, is I've grown up in the church, I've seen it, where you have this strong spiritual connection, with God, everybody, all that kind of stuff, but with your brother or your sister or whatever it is, and then people get into business together, right? What you're saying, I'm just repeating what Dan said, and then something happens in that business that now leaks over into this spiritual family side that absolutely destroys it. Destroys it. And I don't think it has to happen like that every time. I would just say that's the way I've seen it most of the time.
Yeah.
This may come across harsh, but I really feel like I'm just being led right here. Let's talk about the function of the church. What is God's purpose with the church? It's to edify and equip the saints to do his will. Why are we turning it into a business networking place? I just don't believe it has any place here. Because the purpose of the church is to edify and equip the saints to do the work of the Holy Spirit, do the work of God. Why do we have to do business network in that place? We don't. Because that's not what it was designed to do.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from on that, but at the same time, I think it is different because you do build relationships with everybody. Everybody, does something. So it's just kind of, it's an easy, once you start building relationships, you're like, oh, he does lawn care? Okay, let me, or whatever. I don't think people, his intention, maybe some are, I don't know. But I don't think people's intentions are to, say, let's network here, you know what I mean? And if it is, they really need to check their heart.
I disagree.
Well, we can agree to disagree. We'll fight after this. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, but I just disagree. I think a lot of times people, rather than trust God for provision, they see an angle to manipulate a little bit and use their Jesus. Why do people put the Jesus fish on their business card? To use that angle to hopefully catch more business. And to me, that's a little bit manipulative in nature. And no offense if you do that, guys. Like, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Yeah. That's a personal preference, and maybe God's going to have to light a bush on fire in my yard and change me on that. But I've got lots of experience in that arena.
Yeah.
I've been burned by very close friends. I've been burned by really, really godly people. But like I said, you start poking people's pocketbooks and business dealings, you will see the carnal side of man come out really quick. And you're like, whoa, where did that come from? I thought we were amening together last week. Why are we suing each other this week?
Yeah.
Well, Proverbs addresses this over and over and over a lot. And it's beware, beware, beware. Do not sue each other. If you enter in and you screw up, don't sue each other. Don't do that. There's lots of things you can look in the Bible that warn against how we treat each other in business. And it's just a dangerous thing to do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'm nobody. That's just the way
It'd be so tough, because I think at the end of the day, I'm thinking from a pastoral standpoint, and I'm like, I don't want to put any divides against anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want for this brother to look at this brother and go, yeah, but he did that. And yeah, or whatever it is. And I think that creeps into our minds and into us so oftentimes, where it's like, no, let's just have church together.
We're supposed to come together.
Well, the good thing is now we have two campuses. So you say, hey, it didn't work out. We're going to go.
Yeah, I'm going over here. Forget those guys.
That sounds like the mature thing to do. The other big thing is if I recommend someone in this congregation and I forget that we've got 5 other people that do the same thing, it's going to hurt them. It's just going to.
Yeah.
If we have 5 air conditioning contractors,
I've dealt with that. Yeah.
And I recommend one because I'm like, oh yeah, we got so and so at the church. It's going to hurt the other 4.
And they could be and you can mean every word of it, like they're the best of the best.
Absolutely. So that's why I even tend to not recommend anybody, because we have lots of people that do a lot of the same stuff. A lot of you guys are doing what you're doing. A lot of you guys are doing what he's doing, and as I want to disengage from the business side because I'm not a business networking guy.
Yeah.
My business is God and His kingdom. It's bringing people. If we bring people to God here in this place, we get their minds renewed. We strengthen them and we teach them how to be godly men. They're going to run out and they're going to run their businesses like that, and this is going to all stop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't even like saying what I do just because I feel like it's dishonoring. But anyway.
No, I think it's okay for people to know what everybody does. Like, that's great. That's part of their life.
Yeah.
But I just think the problem that we get into sometimes is we go, I see, like, you're a Christian, and then the moment they don't treat you like they're a Christian, or you treat them like you're not a Christian, things start splintering really quick. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever our idea of how a Christian should act or respond.
All of a sudden, there's another denomination started. The first church of the non-house builders.
Yeah.
Just kidding. That was a joke.
So that's all the questions we have. I guess last question: who's the GOAT? Is it Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
I don't even. I feel like I've had this conversation too
You know,
many times.
I'm going to choose the path of honor here.
I'm
and
going to choose
honor,
Anthony. I'm going to choose Anthony Edwards.
I'm going to honor Michael Jordan. Y'all thought I was going to honor Pastor Adam.
I knew where you were going. We've had this conversation too many times. Oh, I don't know. It's
Cool.
Hey, great questions. Thank you guys for sending in your questions.
Absolutely.
So appreciate it. Like you said, hopefully it helps some people out and they can find some freedom in their life.
Just quick testimony on this. Last week, I'm standing in the lobby, and a person approached me and just said, "Oh my gosh, I just want to tell you, you guys read one of my questions, and I felt like it was God speaking through the answer. It just ministered to me so much." And this person said it with tears in their eyes, like it was a genuine thing. So, thank you guys for submitting all these questions, and
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for answering them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to ask them.
Best we could.
Yes, sir. Well, look forward to the next one.
Let's go.